Hyrule is an incredibly diverse land with almost every type of biome you can think of, ranging from forests to tundra to even a volcano. And in this video, I wanted to go through each of these regions and figure out which one is the best as well as which is the worst. The first thing we need to figure out is exactly what is a region. There are two main ways I can think of to split the world into distinct areas. The first is each Sheikah Tower being its own region, which would give a total of 15 different areas. The other would be to look at the map and take the name areas as the 8 different regions. I feel like that second option would work better for this video, as I think the map does a better job of splitting the land into distinct regions, and it would also give a lot less options to choose between. And with that out of the way, the 8 different regions of Hyrule are Lanayru, Necluda, Faron, Akala, Central Hyrule, Eldin, Gerudo, and Hebra. The things I'm looking for when deciding how good a region is are the scenery, if there's any good quests or storylines to do, whether you need to wear any specific gear for weather protection, if there's any sort of town or civilization, and if it's either dangerous or hard to navigate. And after considering these aspects, I'll give it a final score out of 10. I'm going to begin with Akala because it seems like a good neutral starting point. Akala is a grassy area with some steep mountains and a few small forests. There is no extreme temperature, but the rain can be an issue. I'm not a big fan of the main quest, which is the Blue Flame, since I find it kind of tedious, and there's also just not many quests here in general. The only civilization is Terrytown, which you don't get until later in the game, and it's also one of the smallest villages. There are a lot of nice paths here to make navigation easy, but it can be dangerous in some parts, and unlocking the tower is very difficult. Akala's final score is a 6 out of 10. Faron is a very unique area of Hyrule. Similar to a rainforest, there's lots of rain, waterfalls, and tropical trees. There's not much civilization here other than Hyrule Village, which isn't really a part of the main Faron area, and it's more off to the side without much to do there. There's no harsh climates here, but the constant rain and thunder, as well as the steep, slippery cliffs, can make the area very difficult to navigate, but at least there aren't too many enemies here, so you're pretty safe. There's a bit of a lack of quests here, or anything to really make this region stand out, so to me it feels like a bit of a waste of an idea, so its total score is 6 out of 10. Part of Hebra is quite nice, while the other half is a snowy mountainy area that's very painful to navigate, and if you don't have the proper equipment, you are not getting far. Although the view can be really great from up here, and you can get some really awesome shield surfing. The quests here are pretty cool, such as some of the shrine quests and the divine beast. The temperature and navigation are both nice and easy in the Tabant parts without too many enemies. Rito Village is a pretty cool town, but there's nothing that really separates it from other areas. But with the snowy mountains holding this region back, the best it can get is a 6 out of 10. The thing that really stands out with Lanayru is Zora's Domain, because it has to be the coolest area in the whole game. It's probably the biggest town, surrounded by waterfalls and mountains. This also gives a really good view of the area. It can be dangerous to navigate due to enemies, but there's a lot of nice paths to make the navigation easier. The Divine Beast here might be my favorite of the 4, but other than that, the only standout quest that comes to mind is the Spring of Wisdom. This is also the only area with extreme temperature being very snowy, and I'm going to give this area a final score of an 8 out of 10. Gerudo is probably the most bland region in this game, with half being completely sand and the other being snowy mountains. Navigation is extremely difficult here, needing snow and sand boots, as well as extreme heat and cold protection. And it can also take a really long time to get from place to place due to the lack of shrines and not having access to a horse. I actually do really like the quests here, and sneaking through the Yiga base is one of the most fun parts of the game. Gerudo Town and Karakara Bazaar are also pretty cool and unique, but it won't save this region with its final score being just a 3 out of 10. Before we start on Central Hyrule, I wanted to mention that the Great Plateau is a part of this region, as well as some of the northern areas like the Korok Forest. But with its size, this region still has the least amount of civilization of them all, with the Korok Forest being the only proper town, and it's also the smallest town in the game. Central Hyrule is the most dangerous area in the land, with it being littered with guardian stalkers and enemies. Although this region does have the best quests with Destroy Ganon, most of the Champion's Ballad, the tutorial, and more. There's also no extreme temperatures other than the plateau's snowy half. The castle kind of ruins the view here when it's overrun by malice, therefore I'm giving it a final score of a 5 out of 10, with the quest saving it from being much lower. Necluda has the most civilization in all of Hyrule, with Kakariko and Hateno Village. A lot of civilization also leads to a lot of quests, and there's some really good ones here, like the Stolen Heirloom. Navigation is very convenient, with lots of paths, and there aren't many enemies, with the ones that you do see being mainly red and blue. There's no harsh climates, as well as not much rain. The scenery isn't the most interesting other than Dueling Peaks, and a few other small areas, but overall, Necluda doesn't really have any issues or inconveniences. And this is probably because it's meant to be the first region you visit after the plateau, but that doesn't stop it from getting a 9 out of 10. Finally, we end off with Eldin. This region has the most extreme temperature of any, and you will literally burn alive if you don't have the right armor. The view is also pretty terrible when you're surrounded by fiery ash and stony mountains. The main town, being Goron Village, is pretty cool and creative, but that's really all there is in this area. And there's also not many quests other than the Divine Beast quest, which can be frustrating having to lead Yunobo up the mountain. There is a main path through the area, but it can be very dangerous due to enemies as well as an Igneo Talus. Sadly, Eldin's final score is just a 2 out of 10. This means that based on my ranking, the best region in Breath of the Wild is Necluda. This, as well as Lanayru being the second best region, shows that the best areas are the ones with no standout aspects like climate or terrain, but the simple regions that just nail every aspect about them and don't really have any downsides. Even with that, these regions still aren't boring, and they're probably more fun to explore since you don't have to bother with cliffs or weather protection. You can just get on a horse and start moving from one end to another, and it's why I love Necluda so much. It is also intended to be the first region you explore, which is probably why it is simple, but also has a lot of civilization and areas to explore. We also now know the worst region in Breath of the Wild, which is pretty much the opposite of every factor that makes Necluda great, and it's Eldin. Eldin is incredibly difficult to explore with almost nothing to do and nowhere to go. The only reason for traveling there is for the Divine Beast and a few shrines, but that's really about it. Eldin is unique, but that's not always good, and I feel like it could have been a good region if there was more to do or if it was less restrictive, but I don't think it was really meant to be a major area. But that is all for this video, and I wanted to remind you that this is still just my own opinion, and it's completely fine if you disagree and love a region that I ranked badly. Let me know what region you think is the best, or if you disagree with any of my rankings, and feel free to like and subscribe as it really goes a long way, and goodbye.